bigger shape niya. The Ports of Maiden. The Ports of Maiden is composed of, yung column nila is designed to have a structure in a form of image of a woman. Yung image of a woman na yan na ginawang column, yan tinatawag na caryatids. And then Theater of Dionysius, also part of the Acropolis. Yan lang yung mga importante dyan. And then the Propylaea. Kaya lang yung Propylaea, hindi nyo na makikita ngayon because it's already in ruins. Okay. Greatest contribution ng Greek architecture. Pag tinignan nyo yung mga Greek temples, akala nyo pare-pareho lang. Pero actually yung order niya is magkaiba. Column order. Column order, usually makikita mo yan dito. Itong nasa ibabaw niyan. Magkaiba ang design. Hindi mo, pag without the knowledge of architecture minsan, hindi mo to mapapansin. So, anong mga contribution nila is the Doric order column, which is this one. Ganito ang shape niya. And then the Ionic order. Ganito. And then the Corinthian. Tatlo na to, pag makikita nyo to, it is always related to Greek architecture. And most of this architecture was copied by the Roman Empire. Kaya Roman Empire, usually kinopya nila yung Greek architecture and then they created their own image at gumawa sila ng Roman architecture. Mamaya, pag-usapan natin yung Roman architecture at kung anong contribution ng Roman architecture sa modern day construction. Panathinaikos, hindi ko mabasa na gusto. Panathinaikos Stadium in Athens, Greece was built in 330 BC. It's a multi-purpose stadium. Itong stadium na to is was rediscovered in the 4th century. It was largely abandoned in the 4th century nang mag-upisa yung Christianity. Usually during the rise of Christianity, yung mga temples were destroyed because they were considered as pagan temple. And including yung mga ganitong mga structure, mga ancient structures, maraming na sira yung mga early Christians. Hindi mo rin sila masisisi kasi they don't have the knowledge of the legacy of architecture noong araw. They are not well educated about architecture. Hindi katulad ngayong araw na when we study architecture, we were taught na kailangan mahalin mo yung mga legacy ng architecture. Yung mga lumang structure, kailangan i-preserve yan. And because that reminds us on how we used to be in the 4th century. In 1869, na-excavate ang lugar na to and then they rediscovered. It was the venue of the 1896 Modern Olympics. 1896, nag-umpisa ang Olympics sa Athens, Greece in 1896. Supposed to be after 100 years, in 1996, supposed to be ang Olympic sa Greece. But due to budget constraint, 1996 Olympics was held in Atlanta. But in 2004, bumalik ulit sa Greece, sa Athens ang Olympics in 2004. At itong area na to, itong stadium na to is ginamit nila para sa finishing part ng Classic Marathon, ang annual Olympic Marathon. And also, Classic Marathon, usually dito ang tinatawag na finish line. Actually, marathon is pangalan niya ng nag-originate yan sa lugar sa Greece din. When there was a battle of the marathon between the Greek and the Persians, there was a runner, a soldier called Philippines. He ran the total of 42 kilometers or equivalent to 26 miles. Pumunta sa Athens, tinakbo niya yan para isabihin na in order to give the good news of victory. Shortly after he delivered the message, Philippines, he died. So, ang tinakbo niya is the total of 42 kilometers, which is exactly the length of the modern day marathon. Okay, Roman architecture. Dito tayo. Architectural character is vastness and magnificence, ostentation and ornateness. Roman architecture, actually, they give on a structural and aesthetics ang pagkagawa nila. Roman architecture na perfect nila ang tinatawag na vaulting system or the arch. Yung arch, simple lang yan. Kasi noong araw, hindi reinforced concrete ang ginagawa. Kukuha lang sila ng big rock and then they carve into a square position and then they lay it parang masonry with the use of mortars lang. Hindi yan na epoxy o strong epoxy. Only by the use of gravity, kaya nila nabubuo yung structure nila. Ito, pag yan nakikita mo to, they carve the stone carefully para magkakaroon ng arch. And then, dito sa taas, ang tinatawag nila na keystone. Keystone, ibig sabihin, pag tinanggal mo yan, lahat ng mga structure yan, bibigay na yan. All the structure will collapse. Kaya ang pagkagawa nila is, na perfect nila is by the use of gravity. Sa ngayon, today's construction, madali lang yan by the use of reinforced concrete. Pag sinabi mong reinforced concrete is a combination of concrete and steel. Concrete is a material very strong sa compression, but is a very weak siya sa tension. Ang steel is a very strong sa tension, but very weak sa compression. Kaya kung i-combine mo yung dalawang materials na yan, yan ang materials na ginagamit sa modern day of construction, which is known as reinforced concrete. And also the Romans has perfect the use of vaulting system and dome. Bakit dome? Usually dome is a symbol of power. Kaya kung mga even sa mga modern structure ngayong araw, naglalagay talaga sila sa dome. Halimbawa sa mga seat of power of government, naglalagay sila. And even in the churches, parang sinasabi nila that supreme, ang pinakataas sa lahat ay ang Diyos. Kaya nagko-construct sila ng dome. Contribution naman ng column order sa Roman architecture is the composite column. Ito siya. And then the Tuscan column. Ito yung dalawang contribution ng Roman architecture na itong ganitong design is being used until today sa modern architecture. Okay, Pantheon of Rome. Isa sa mga sample ng mga Roman architecture is the Pantheon of Rome. Kung makita niyo to, meron siyang dome sa gitna. During that time, the Roman discovered the concrete. No? Concrete usually is a mixture of cement, sand, and gravel. Pero noong araw, walang cement. So lime ang ginagamit nila. And lime and plus, they mix it with the volcanic ash. Pag may volcanic ash na tinatawag na putzolana, nagkakaroon ng chemical reaction in which the concrete becomes waterproof. So, ang na-discovered ng Amerika noong araw, they discovered the waterproof concrete. Itong Pantheon of Rome is ginawa ng mga Roman na the largest unsupported concrete dome. Ibig sabihin yung concrete dome nito is without reinforced concrete, but they managed to pour a dome na concrete structure. Why? Naglalagay sila ng mga tinatawag na coffers, which is to make the structure lighter. And naglalagay sila ng oculus in order to relieve the strength, which is exactly the modern theory of the modern day structural engineering. Okay, Roman architecture. Ito yung dalawang temple, no? Greek temple, ganitong itsura is Roman architecture. Sa isang tingin mo lang mukhang pareho, pero magkaiba sila, no? Usually ang Greek is in proportion is matataas ang Roman temple sa Greek temple. And usually Greek temple noong araw is they locate the temple sa mga hills, sa mga valleys, sa mga malalayong lugar. While sa Roman architecture, nilalagay nila yung temples nila is within the city para mas madali sa mga tao sa mag-worship. In case of kung religious activities nila malapit lang. Kaya yung mga modern churches, yung mga simbahan natin sa Pilipinas or anywhere in the world, they construct their churches sa mga malapit sa mga tao. Ito rin ang mga contribution ng mga Roman temples na inadapt ng mga Christianity na ginawa nila yung mga churches nila within the community. Okay, and amphitheaters, number one is the Colosseum. Roman Colosseum, nakatayo pa rin yan sa Rome. This arena used for gladiatorial combats. Noon, mayroong mga stories sa Bible na yung mga Christianity, they are being executed na pinapaano sila sa layon. and also for gladiator as a form of entertainment ng mga Roman Empire. Okay, triumphal arch. Yung arch is a symbol of victory, monument, and usually they are being carved para sa ipapakita yung mga campaign, victorious campaign or general campaign. This one is known as the Arch of Constantine. And monumental arch also meron din is the Trajan column. It's a similar symbol of victory ng Roman Empire. And then the aqueducts. Aqueducts is very much popular. Bakit sila gumawa ng aqueducts? Noong araw, with the absence of modern day plumbing, wala pang mga pipes, the only way to convey water is to make an aqueduct. Parang ito siya, open duct sa ibabaw in which the water will pass through these ducts papunta sa city of Rome. And then pagdating niya sa Rome, it will be distributed sa mga areas in which in the form of fountains. Wala pa mga gripo noong araw. So, in case yung mga Roman citizen, kailangan nila ng tubig, they have to go to the plaza. So, mga fountains. Fountain is not for the purpose of decorative or it's not much of the decorative noong araw. Water supply. And then Roman circus. The Roman circus noong araw, yung mga karera, is being used for horse racing and chariot racing. Roman circus. This one, yung example na to is the circus of Nero. But later, during the rise of Christianity sa Rome, partially it was demolished kasi yung mga materials is ginamit sa pagtayo ng mga simbahan. Ito yung sa baba is the Circus of Nero. Then the rise of Christianity, nagtayo sila ng Old St. Peter's Basilica, which is itong square type. And then on the 13th century, dinimolish nila at nagtayo sila ng somewhere around the 15th or 16th century, nagtayo sila ng modern day St. Peter's Basilica. And the Circus of Nero was totally demolished. Mari mag-iisip tayo, paano nagkaroon ng Christianity sa Rome? Alam natin yung mga Romans noon is ayaw nila sa mga Christianity. Actually noon sa Rome is maraming mga religion. And Rome will allow you to practice your religion as long as you considered also the Roman Emperor to be God. No? Pero kasi yung Christianity is monotheistic. So we only believe in one God. They will not consider the Emperor as the God. Kaya pinagbawalan sila na mag-practice ng Christianity sa Rome. But there was one Roman emperor. His name was Constantine. Constantine the Great. No? Constantine, before siya magiging emperor of Rome, he had a vision. Nakakita siya ng symbol ng cross. Vision of a cross. And he received a message na sinasabi sa kanya, by this sign, you will conquer. So, ginamit niya ang cross na to as a symbol sa mga shields, sa mga parts ng mga as a one of the parang tatak ng mga sundalo niya. After a series of victory, Constantine the Great declared Christianity to be legalized in Rome. Kaya na mag-legalize na yung Christianity sa Rome, doon na nagumpisa ang mag-rise ng mga early Christian. Early Christians started to construct their own churches sa Rome. It was due to Constantine the Great. Okay. Byzantine Architecture. Paano nagkaroon ng Byzantine? Roman Empire was divided into two, the Eastern Roman Empire and the Western Roman Empire. Yung Western Roman Empire was tinayo ni Constantine. Tinawag niyang Constantinople. Constantinople means the city of Constantine, which is known today as the modern day Turkey. In Constantinople, in Byzantine, ay nagkaroon ng isang malaking church which is known as the Hagia Sophia. Dito pinansak ang Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia was the roots ng mga Orthodox Church na ngayong araw. During the fall of Constantine under the Roman Ottoman Turks, This one was invaded by the Muslim. Nang invade ng Muslim to, tinayuan ng apat na tower, which is called the minaret, and ginawa tong mosque. Ginawa ng mga Muslim at mosque. Actually today, parang ginawa yata tong library, ginawang library. Museum ang Hagia Sophia. So, that was the story ng nagkaroon sila ng sarili nilang identity, which is called the Byzantine Architecture. So, number one example ng Byzantine Architecture is this Hagia Sophia. Hagia Sophia, also known as the Santa Sophia. It doesn't mean na dedicated sa isang saint na si Santa Sophia, hindi. Hagia means holy, Santa, holy, and Sophia means wisdom. It is simply called as the Holy Wisdom. Okay, next is the Islamic architecture. Dahil nandito tayo sa Islamic country, we also need to learn about the Islamic architecture. Mosque, no? Meron din silang courtyard. Kung makita mo rito sa courtyard, merong fountain. Before sila magdasal, is naghuhugas muna sila. Noong araw, wala pang mga gripo in order to wash themselves. They go to the fountain and wash themselves before prayers. Pawara is the fountain. No? Mihrab is the niche. And then Dika is the reading desk. Maksura screen. Mimbar is the raised platform. Iwan is the front porch facing the open court. And the minaret. Ito yung minaret is the tower na sa Christianity is ginagawa natin ito as the bell tower. In a Muslim, they call it minaret, in which aakyat sila doon and then they will call on people. Ibig sabihin, pinapanawagan na yung mga tao na pumunta na kayo rito at oras na para magdasal. Yun ang purpose ng minaret. Musalla, nakil, and Qibla. Qibla direction is yung direction. Lahat ng mga mosque na ginagawa, yung direction is towards the Mecca. Okay. Part pa rin ng Islamic architecture is the Dome of the Rock. Dome of the Rock is located in Jerusalem. Mahaba-haba ang kwento nito kasi Jerusalem, dyan nagkaroon dati ng jihad or religious war. War between pinagagawa nila between the Christian and Muslim. Because originally it was under the Jews, and then it was during the early Christian, nagiging part ng Christianity, and then it was invaded by the Muslim, and then Pope Urban, he made a homily sa Europe. Sinabi niya na kailangan nating bawiin ang Jerusalem. So after in the Middle Age, most of the knights in Europe and soldiers pumunta sa Jerusalem para bawiin. So nagkaroon ng malaking war between the Christian and Muslim. Separate na yan. Medyo mahaba-haba ang kwento niya. Sultan Abad Mosque in Turkey, isa sa mga sample ng mga Muslim architecture. Taj Mahal in India, hindi yan mosque, but it's part of Muslim architecture. This is a monument, no, para in the honor sa wife ni Emperor Shah Jahan. And then the Kaaba. In Saudi Arabia, and there's a great mosque, Mecca. Merong black stone yan sa gitna, in which they call Kaaba. Once in a life, sa mga Muslim, they have to go, tinatawag nila na pilgrimage. They have to go to this area and visit it. Kaaba. East Asian architecture. Let's talk about the Chinese architecture. Our Chinese architecture is the entrance gateway, yung tinatawag na Taipang. Makikita natin to usually sa mga Chinatown, sa Binondo, sa Maynila, merong ganyan. It is called Pailo or Paipang. And then the Forbidden Kingdom, isa sa mga temple na ginagawa ng Chinese para as part of the Chinese architecture. And also the pagoda. Usually makikita mo yung pagoda ng Chinese is octagonal in plan, and usually 13-story. Ito naman ang Forbidden Kingdom, bakit nila tinatawag na Forbidden Kingdom? Because it is the place where the emperor, kung saan nakatira yung emperor. It is forbidden to enter the temple without the permission of the emperor. It is forbidden to leave the temple without the permission of the emperor. Ganun ka-stricto yung emperor ng Chinese emperor noong araw. Kaya tinatawag nila na Forbidden Kingdom. Another sample ng Chinese architecture is the Great Walls of China. Actually, Great Walls of China is a form of fortification against the northern invaders. Fortification yan para sa defense nila. Kasi noon medyo aggressive yung mga northerners north of which is the Mongols. They are very aggressive people, and they always invade towns ng China. So they constructed a big fortification para sa line of defense para sa mga northern invaders. Ito naman is the sample of the Japanese architecture. Sa Chinese architecture, yung entrance gateway ay tinatawag nila na paipang. Dito naman sa Japanese architecture, they called it as a torii. Torii is a gateway to the Shinto shrine. Usually, pag bago ka pumasok sa Shinto shrine, meron silang ganitong gateways. Ito naman is the Japanese pagoda. Kung mapapansin nyo, iba yung design niya sa Chinese pagoda. But Chinese pagoda is octagonal in plan. Ito, makikita nyo, is square in plan. At hindi siya ganong mataas. Usually is 5-story lang. Yan ang sample ng mga Japanese architecture. Golden Pavilion. Isa sa mga magandang sample ng Japanese architecture. Tinatawag nila Kinkaku. Castle. Himeji Castle and Osaka Castle. Bakit nga ba tinatawag na castle? Actually, castle is a form of fortification. Pag sinasabi na natin, what is a castle? Castle is a palace. Palace is a castle? No. Magkaiba. Palace is different from the castle. Mamaya, i-discuss natin kung anong pagkakaiba ng palace and a castle. But usually, castle is a fortification. Military fortification. Okay, Romanesque architecture. Huwag nyo i-compare to sa Roman architecture. Romanesque architecture is magkaiba. But they use theory ng methods of construction ng Roman Empire, like the arches, and developed sa mga usually constructed sa pagtayo ng mga churches. Yung sample natin sa Romanesque architecture is the Pisa Cathedral. Pisa is well known sa Leaning Tower of Pisa, which is ganito. This is called the campanile. Campanile dito yung bell tower. Tinatawag nila na bell tower. And then meron silang part na which is called the baptistry. And then the Camposanto, which is the cemetery. Within the area din. Mas malapit din dyan. But it's part of Pisa Cathedral complex. Makita nyo is Pisa Cathedral is usually characterized by arches, semicircular arches. Yan. Let's talk about castle. Kasi pinag-usapan natin kanina yung Japanese castle. What is the castle? Yung sinasabi ng iba, castle is a palace, palace is a castle. Magkaiba. Castle is a fortification, is a military fortification. While the palace is usually is a residential ng mga resident ng mga head of state or royal family. Ganon. However, meron din namang palace na may fortification, may defense fortification, and has a character of a castle. For this case, pwede yan tawagin na castle and a palace. But not all palace are castle, and not all castle are palace. Castle is a fortification sa mga kings or nobles, in which they have to protect the area or their land. And also a defense against invaders. So kasi karamihan sa atin, pag sinasabi natin castle, iba yung nasa isip nila. Ganito. Is this a castle? Yes, but this is categorized as the fantasy castle. Walt Disney Castle yan. Ginagawa na lang na fantasy. But does it function like a castle, like a fortification for defense? No, it's only a fantasy castle. Actually, castle, pwede rin man ganito na lang, timber castle. As simple as that. Pag ganito ang structure with defensive mechanism, with the with the with the barriers, at may mga ganon, it is already considered as a castle. Or like this, yung kinikilala natin na medieval castle. Definition ng castle is a large building, typically of the medieval period, fortified against the attack with thick walls, battlements, towers, and in many cases, moat. Tatlong type ng castle is the moat and bailey castle. And the other one is a stone keep. And number 3 is the concentric castle. Concentric dahil kinatawag na to is meron siyang several walls. Is a line of defense. Meron siyang several line of defense. Na pag when this wall failed, at kung ma-penetrate ng kalaban, meron pa siyang isang wall, inner wall. Kaya tinatawag na concentric castle. Actually, yung mga ng castle is the corner tower. Merong corner tower. Kung naglalaro kayo ng chess, makikita nyo yung rook. Yung rook is usually merong overlapping dito sa taas. Bakit nag-overlap? Bakit lumalabas yan? Ano ang purpose niyan? Kasi yung tinatawag natin na torre or rook sa chess. Ganito lahat ang design nila. Pwede naman straight yan. Bakit na ganun? Bakit may overhang siya ng konti? Actually, it's a part of defensive mechanism. Tinatawag na hoarding is a part yan. Yung ilagyan mo ng takip para sa yung archers hindi madali ma-penetrate from the outside. And then rampart and curtain wall. Ito is a lower wall sa castle, which is the first line of defense. And then merong bigger wall, higher wall, at tinatawag nila na curtain wall. Usually this one is being used sa mga pinakita ko kanina sa yung concentric castle. Ito yung isa sa mga ng castle. The battlement. The battlement, merong crenelle and embrasure. Tapos merong overhang dito na corbel. Dito. Bakit? Ano ang purpose niyan? Actually, is the purpose of tinatawag nila na matriculation. Ibig sabihin, pag mag-penetrate yung mga kalaban dito sa baba, they can shoot some arrows, they can pour hot water, hot oil, para stop yung mga invaders. Kaya nagkaroon ng ganyan. That is the purpose kung bakit ang roof is merong overlapping, merong overhang. It is because of the matriculation. Another sa mga defensive mechanism ng castle is the drawbridge. Ibig sabihin, hindi basta-basta makakatawid yung kalaban para mag-attack ng castle. You can just remove it and then the enemy will have difficulty in crossing the bridge para mag-attack ng castle. And then, dungeon or a keep. Noong araw, in order to keep their prisoners, nilalagay nila sa tinatawag na keep or dungeon. But sooner or later, nilagay nila sa may basement, yun tinatawag na dungeon. And then, the portal is iron with the iron gate. Ito is usually ginagamit sa entrance gate. Pwede mo isara yung dalawang gate sa kabila in order to capture some prisoners na nag-a-attack ng castle. Okay. Speaking about castle, kilala niyo itong castle na to. I think 3 years ago, there was a TV series which is called The Game of Thrones. And this castle was very popular sa kanila. This castle was owned by the family of Starks. Their words are, winter is coming. Ibig sabihin, itong area na to is nagwi-winter. Although ang mga castle is a fantasy castle, or sa mga movie castle, I believe they are supposed to be designed by architects because architects have the total knowledge kung ano ang dapat na design para sa location. Ibig sabihin, itong area na to is nag-i-snow. And yet, they designed the towers in a flat roof. Na? Ibig sabihin, kung flat roof or low slope ang roof mo, mag-accumulate yung snow dyan. And sooner or later, masisira. It will give way. Usually, pag high pitch roof is, ang design sa mga snowy area is high pitch roof in order to, ang snow is babagsak na lang sa baba. Na? Ayan, ganyan. For example, sooner or later, if you become an architect and Walt Disney, i-hire ka nila. We have a fantasy movie and I want you to design the castle. And then properly, because you have the knowledge of architecture, you have the knowledge of the castle defense, and then you can design the castle properly. I'm not talking about the movie. Maganda ang movie Game of Thrones. Pero may mga laps sila sa mga designs nila. Okay? Yan lang. Let's talk about church architecture. Bakit maraming klaseng simbahan? May church, cathedral, basilica, chapel. Bakit ganun? Para sa amin, pareho lang yan, simbahan lang yan lahat. Let's differentiate. No? Church building usually is ruled by the parish church. No? Pinapatakbo ng parish church. Kaya tinatawag niyan usually sa atin is parish. Pinapatakbo ng parish priest, sorry. So it is a parish church. Cathedral, a church that has a seat of the bishop. Basta under sa archdiocese or a bishop, under the power of the bishop, it is will be called a cathedral. Kahit malaking simbahan yan, kung hindi siya under sa bishop, kung hindi siya seat of power ng bishop, hindi siya pwedeng tawagin na cathedral. And basilica, a church that is obtained honorary title from the Pope. Ang Pope lang ang pwede mag-declare na ang simbahan na yan is a basilica. And then a chapel, a building used as a place of worship, not run by a parish priest. Ibig sabihin, kahit private ka ng tao, pwede ka mag-construct ng sarili mong church, no? And it cannot be called as a parish church. It will be only called as a chapel. Kung mayaman ka, pwede ka magtayo ng malaking chapel, mas malaki pa sa St. Peter's Basilica, and you cannot call it as a basilica. You can only call it as a chapel because hindi siya under the seat of power ng bishop and hindi siya and doesn't have the honorary title from the Pope. And then abbeys, ito sa mga abbeys and minster sa England. And the shrine. Shrine is tulad sa mga EDSA shrine. The Pope, no? Ang the Pope is the the Pope is known as also as the Bishop of Rome. So, ano ang church na under sa Pope? Do you think is the St. Peter's Basilica? No. Kasi yung seat of power ng Pope is the Archbasilica of St. Lateran. Yun ang seat of power of Rome. Hindi yung St. Peter's Basilica. Although St. Peter's Basilica is the center of the Catholic Church, hindi yan under sa seat power. As a bishop, hindi yan under sa seat of power ng Pope or the Bishop of Rome. 4 major basilica in Rome, which is declared by the Pope, is the Archbasilica of St. Lateran, which is a seat of power ng Pope. St. Peter's Basilica. St. Peter's Basilica is a basilica lang siya, pero hindi siya pwedeng tawagin as cathedral. Basilica of St. Paul outside wall and Santa Maria Maggiore. St. John Lateran is considered as a basilica and also as a cathedral kasi under siya sa seat of power ng Bishop of Rome. Okay? Let's talk about bell towers. Bell towers, kung sa mga Muslim pa meron tayong minaret, doon sila sumisigaw, singing a song that calling people out to pray, na time to pray. Sa atin naman is as a Christian, we just ring the bell na ibig sabihin na tinatawag na kayo na oras na para magsimba at mag-uumpisa na ang misa. One sample ng bell tower is called a campanile. Campanile at isa pa is the belfry na tinatawag. Anong pagkakaiba ng campanile at belfry? Yung campanile usually is a separate structure. Hindi siya nakadikit sa simbahan. Pag yung bell tower ay nakadikit sa simbahan, katulad sa atin sa Pilipinas, lahat yan ay nakadikit sa simbahan, it will be called as the belfry. But take note, yung casing ng bell, ito na tinatago na yan, kung saan nakalagay ang bell, can be also called as belfry, no? Ito siya, buong structure, they can call it as a belfry. Pero yung area na kung saan nakatago yung bell can also be called as belfry. No? Ito is a campanelle na mayroon siyang belfry. Ito siya, the whole structure is belfry and meron siyang area which is called also as belfry kung saan nakalagay yung bell. Meron pang isa, is ginagamit lang sa Gothic architecture. It is characterized by a tall roof, no? A tall roof, which is called spires. Ang tawag nito nila ay steeple. Is characterized. Ganon din siya. Meron din siyang belfry. So, yan ang tinatawag na bell towers. Gothic architecture na naman. Ang pagkakaiba ng Gothic architecture sa Romanist architecture is that ginagamit nila is the pointed arcs. Hindi siya yung semicircular arcs. They are using the pointed arcs. And then, ang pag-construct nila ng simbahan, they can constructed a thinner walls and a taller church. Lately, ang nasunog 3 years ago, Notre Dame of Paris. Notre Dame of Paris ang nasunog 3 years ago. I think within 5 years, siguro baka ma-total renovate nila. Okay. One of the characteristics ng Gothic architecture is the flying buttress. Ito, sa Romanist architecture, pag tinatawag ng buttress, ibig sabihin yung tukod sa labas ng simbahan. Yung tukod yan para support the wall. Sa Gothic architecture naman, since the wall are very high, they need to support it. Yung support na yan is tinatawag na flying buttress. Makikita mo lang yan sa mga Gothic architecture. Now, if you talk about Philippine architecture, meron tayong dyan na Gothic architecture din ang design. Pero hindi siya, hindi talaga siya ginawa ng Gothic time. It was the San Sebastian Church. Kaya lang San Sebastian Church was constructed using modern materials. Although na gumagamit din siya ng pointed arcs, wala kang makitang flying buttress kasi hindi naman kailangan magtayo ng flying buttress kasi matibay na ang pagkagawa because they use the modern technology, modern materials. Pwede mo rin tawagin Gothic yan, pero yun ano siya, Neo-Gothic. It means the new type of Gothic architecture. Neo-Gothic. Yan ang San Sebastian Church. Ito ang Notre Dame of Paris, na which nasunog yata 2 or 3 years ago. I think now it is under renovation. Lahat yata ng mga weak materials is naayos na nila and they are reinforced properly. I think by next year they will start to construct the roof. Actually, yung roof nito dati is composed of a timber roof. Yung timber roof lang na ginamit dito, I think you can consume the whole forest para itayo lang. Ganun karami ang timber ang nasunog, ang nawala rito na masunog yung Notre Dame of Paris. Okay, Gothic architecture is isa sa mga sample ng Gothic architecture is the Florence Cathedral. Florence Cathedral was made by Arnolfo de Cambio. No? Unfortunately, hindi niya natapos to. Without the dome, namatay siya. And then after so many years, there was another architect which is known as Filippo Brunelleschi. He designed the dome. No? Ang kagandahan nito ng dome ng Florence Cathedral is that this is the largest unsupported brick dome. Brick ang ginamit niya. Usually brick, alam mo naman, pag mag-slope ka rito, mahuhulog ang brick. But he has the idea and style kung paano niya ginawa to, kung bakit hindi nag-give way. And then, once natapos ni Filippo Brunelleschi ang Florence Cathedral, dito, it gave birth to another type of architecture, which is known as the Renaissance architecture. So, we have 15 minutes, pero bilis-bilisan natin. Anyway, modern architecture, pag-aralan mo yan kasi marami pa kayong ibang subject na let's focus on the history of architecture before the modern architecture. Isang sample ng Renaissance architecture is the St. Peter's Basilica is the seat of power of the Catholic Church. No? Hindi lang naman isang architect, maraming architect and then a series of design hanggang sa matapos to. So, for ang mabilang mo rito, there were 12 architects, no? Donato Bramante, si Raphael, kilala natin. Hindi yan Ninja Turtles, ha? Michelangelo, ito, kilala natin siya yung nag-paint ng ceiling ng Sistine Chapel, na? Carlo Maderna, Giovanni, and so on and so forth. So there were 12 architects hanggang sa natapos yung St. Peter's Basilica. Ito naman is the Vatican Palace. Itong somewhere along this area is the Vatican Palace, which is the residence of the Pope of Rome, no? Pope, the official residence of the Pope. Somewhere along this Vatican Palace is yung maliit na chapel, yung tinatawag na Sistine Chapel. Maaari napakasimple na ng itsura ng Sistine Chapel, pero pag nasa loob, makikita mo dito yung painting sa ceiling ni Michelangelo. It's a Renaissance work of art na hanggang ngayon nandoon pa rin. Yung ano nito, ang purpose ng Sistine Chapel is every time pag namatay ang Pope, no? Pag namatay ang Pope, lahat ng cardinals throughout the world will pupunta sa Rome and they will be secluded in this area which is called the Sistine Chapel. And then they will, yan ang tinatawag na, they will perform a conclave. A conclave is the election. Election at mamimili sila kung sino ang susunod na magiging Pope. No? Pag nasa ibang bansa, pag namatay ang president, papalitan ng vice president. Pag namatay ang king, meron kang kasunod, yung prince siguro dyan ang papalit o yung queen ang papalit. Pag dito naman sa Vatican, pag namatay ang Pope, all official business ng government will totally stop hanggang sa magkaroon sila ng bagong Pope. No? Kasi alam natin yung Vatican is a separate country, is an independent country. And then after that, kung magkaroon sila ng successful election, magkakaroon dito ng white smoke na lalabas. And then they will declare na ang election nila was a success and they have a new Pope. So, I'm not talking about yung belief mo as a Christian. I'm talking about the history of architecture. And history of architecture is mostly connected with this Catholicism, connected sa Catholicism. Another sample of Renaissance architecture is sa Russia naman is the Kremlin Palace in Moscow, St. Basil's Cathedral. Itong St. Basil's Cathedral, to sa mga Orthodox Church. And then St. Petersburg Winter Palace. Another part ng Renaissance architecture is also the Baroque architecture. Sa Rome, kung makapunta kayo balang araw, merong Trevi Fountain dyan. Tapos ang building sa likod, yan is a very good example of Baroque architecture. Sinabi nila, once you makapunta ka sa Rome, you will turn your back in this tower and then toss a coin that someday babalik ka ulit sa eternal city called Rome. Yan. Baroque architecture. Okay. Revival architecture. Revival architecture is dito nag-umpisa yung modern architecture. Ni-revive nila yung mga lumang style of architecture, yung mga Gothic architecture, Renaissance, Baroque, ni-revive nila lahat by the use of modern materials. At dito na rin nag-umpisa yung industrial development ng mundo. Nagkaroon na ng structural iron, cast iron, zinc, steel, and ginamit na uli nila yung reinforced concrete. And nagkaroon ng mga new building types na ginawa, which is industrial building, warehouse, House of Parliament, railway station, museum, department stores, hospital, banks, and gano'n na. It's because of the modern era, and then the government realized that they need such a structure para in order to run the community, nagkakaroon sila ng mga public buildings, nagko-construct sila ng public buildings. So, sample ng mga public buildings na ginawa during the revival buildings or designs during the revival period is the Garnier Opera House in Paris, Victor Emmanuel Monument in Rome, Arc of Triumph sa Paris, And yung Eiffel Tower, no? This was designed by Gustav Eiffel. Reichstag in Berlin, I think this was the headquarters ng Third Reich during panahon ni Adolf Hitler. The Robbie House in Chicago, designed by the famous Frank Lloyd Wright, o tinatawag na Prairie House. Monticello Garden, designed by the third American president, Thomas Jefferson. No? He is the third president ng Amerika and also an architect. Siya ang nag-design ng Monticello Garden. And then the White House in Washington, the official residence of the President of the United States of America, designed by James Hoban. It is English Palladian style of architecture. State Capitol Building in Richmond, Virginia, also designed by Thomas Jefferson. During the American Civil War, ito yung naging center ng Confederate States of America. Kasi yung southern states, nag-rebel sila against the United States. So this one was the use of the headquarters by the Confederate States of America. After 5 years of bloody war, nag-surrender ang Confederate States of America. So, nanalo. So during that time, the President of America was, Lincoln Memorial, was Abraham Lincoln. Shortly after the war, President Lincoln was assassinated. United States Capitol in Washington, D.C., kung makita nyo, meron siyang dome. Bucket dome, usually is the seat of power, no? Crowning dome. Ito naman ang isa sa mga famous building na church which is located in Spain. It is called the Sagrada Familia, designed by Antonio Gaudí. It's the UNESCO World Heritage declared noong 7 November 2010. Pope Benedict consecrated the church and proclaimed it into a minor basilica. Hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin tapos. The Crystal Palace in London. Ito, nung nagkaroon kasi ng nagkaroon ng event sa London, this Crystal Palace was constructed para sa event lang yan. Yung world event, it's a fair, parang fair na event. So after that, after few years, yung building na to is nasunog. But ang building nito is it is where the modern architecture starts because of this Crystal Palace in London after the construction. Okay, Church of Lambertos. Ito ay kinonstruct. It is on neo-Renaissance architecture. It's now on revival architecture. Using the old style of architecture, this one was constructed. Ngayon, kaming mga architects, we are proud. We are proud of our legacy. We are proud sa mga history namin, no? And usually we protect this one. Yung mga legacy, architecture legacy, we study architecture and we study history to protect our legacy. Kasi once you become an architect and this legacy falls into the wrong hands, ganito ang mangyari. I want you to see this. Nako, para maiiyak ako tuwing makikita ko to. This is what happened when the legacy of architecture fall into the wrong hands. Ay, naku. Ang tagal nilang ginawa yung building na yan, napakahirap. Even with the modern technology, napakahirap gawin yan. Pero napakadaling tibagin. Architect Janelle, how much time do I have? Pwede malaman? I think we have 10 minutes. Okay ba? So quickly, itakboy natin yung modern architecture. This is the reason why we study history of architecture. In order, pag mag-study ka ng architecture, you will have a concrete idea kung ano ang history, kung anong pinanggalingan ng architecture, kung gaano ka-importante yung mga lumang structure. Kasi once ang legacy na to is mapupunta sa mga will put into the wrong hands, it will be lost forever. Hindi na natin maibalik yan. So we work hard para ma-protect ang mga ganitong building. Birth of skyscrapers sa modern architecture is the home insurance building, Prudential building, and the Carson building. Another sample ng mga modern architecture is the Bauhaus by the famous architect Walter Gropius and Villa Savoy by Le Corbusier. TWA or Trans World Airlines Terminal or the JFK Airport constructed by Eero Saarinen. Then napag-usapan natin to, the Sydney Opera House by Bjorn Utzon. Yoyogi National Gymnasium 1964 in Tokyo, designed by Kenzo Tange. Isang sample pa is the Lotus Temple. And the Walt Disney Concert Hall in Los Angeles, California, designed by Frank Gehry. Art Deco is also part ng modern architecture. Yan na lang natin yan. Yung Empire State Building is the one of the best example ng mga Art Deco design. And then Art Nouveau. Medyo malalim na yan, hindi na natin i-discuss yan. Pero pasadahan lang natin. Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright. Ito, pag nag-study ka ng architecture, usually, Architect Marvin, Architect Chanel, paki-advise na lang kung ilang minutes ako. Okay. Falling Water, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. The Louvre is designed by Jean Nouvel in Abu Dhabi. And the Torch Tower, dito sa Aspire. Dito yan sa Qatar, Aspire Tower. Solomon Guggenheim Museum. Shenzhen-Baoan International Airport by Maximiliano Puxas. Museum of Islamic Arts in IMP, Qatar din yan. And Qatar National Museum, also designed by Jean Nouvel. Empire State Building, Eiffel Tower, Chrysler's Tower, Burj Al Arab sa Dubai, Guggenheim Museum by Frank Gehry, Louvre Museum, IMP din yun. Again, the Dancing Building, Space Needle, Petronas Tower, Willis Tower, Beijing National Stadium or tinatawag na Bird's Nest. Diyan hineld yung Olympics nung sa China. Casa Mila in Barcelona, Spain, also designed by Antonio Gaudi. Antonio Gaudi was the one who designed the Sagrada Familia Church. Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, Sydney Opera House again. Okay, the tallest building in the world, number 1 is the Khalifa Tower in Dubai, Burj Khalifa. Merdeka 11A in Malaysia. Shanghai Tower, Burj Al Bayt Tower in Saudi Arabia. Ping An Tower in China. And then the Lot World Tower, which is located in South Korea. Ano pa? 7-1 World Trade Center, Guangzhou City Financial Center, Tianjin City Financial Center, China Zone City Tower. And sinama ko na lang number 11 kasi famous tong building na to is the Taipei 101. Philippine architecture, I don't think we have time for this. Architect Marvin, shall I close?
So Rick, you have 8 minutes po to wrap up your presentation.
8 minutes. Okay. I will have short 5 minutes regarding the history of architecture. History of architecture sa Philippines is mostly under the Spanish rule na lang ang makikita mong sample. Because as a history natin, we will also conquered by the Spanish conquistador, just like what the Spanish did sa Mexico, that they totally destroyed the Mexico. Hindi natin alam kung ano ang part ng history natin. Because I know that history, because before the Spanish conquistador came to the Philippines, merong mga different independent kingdoms ng Philippines, just like the Kingdom of Manila, Sultanate of Sulu, and Sri Visayan Empire in the Visayas, yung mga ganun na. But all of these were totally lost during when the Spanish conquistador came to the Philippines. At walang written history regarding to support kung how they destroyed. But I believe in the modern city of Manila lies the dead city of the ancient kingdom of Manila, just like what we have in Mexico. Pero hindi natin napapatunayan yan. Wala tayong evidence. Okay, Spanish rule tayo, and then nag-American rule, and then nagkaroon ng Japanese invasion. Japanese invasion, nagkaroon ng war in Manila, in the city of Manila, in which so many buildings were destroyed during the war. And then during that time, Manila became the Stalingrad of Asia. Ganitong itsura ng Manila after World War II. So after World War II, Manila was developed, was repaired. So marami tayong mga lumang structure sa Philippines na nawala because of the war because of the Japanese invasion of the Philippines. Wala rin tayong magawa because we have to be liberated by the Americans. At first, hindi nila tinibag yung mga lumang building. But since the Japanese are using the building as a structure, as a stronghold, so the least they can do is they have to destroy the building. So after the Battle of Manila is, makikita nyo, is Manila Post Office, ganyan. Fort Santiago, Manila City Hall, Metropolitan Theater, and the old legislative building. So, meron tayong mga lumang building architecture pa rin sa Pilipinas, which is characterized by the region. This one is the Esneg House, Kalinga House, Kankakay House, and Bontok House, and the Ifugao House. Yan. Mindanao in Zulu, we have this Badjao House, or the tinatawag natin na House on Stilts. Samal House, Yakan House, and Maranao House. Okay, but typically, ang sa atin, is anywhere in the Philippines, makikita mo yung tinatawag na bahay kubo. Hindi ko na i-discuss to on detail kasi mas marami tayong magandang topic na i-discuss ko dito. But typically, this is a bahay kubo. And then, na-develop yan into a Spanish house, tinatawag na bahay na bato. Or minsan tinatawag natin as the Antillian house. Bakit tinatawag na bahay kubo? Kubo means a cube. Bahay is in the Spanish is also a Spanish word as a balay. It simply means as the cube house. Bigan City Colonial Architecture. Yung mga na-develop is the Emilio Aguinaldo House in Cavite, Cavite. This house was designed by Emilio Aguinaldo himself. Kung ang United States, meron silang former president ng America, si Thomas Jefferson, na nag-design ng Monticello House, meron din tayo si Emilio Aguinaldo, which is considered to be the first president of the Philippines, in which he designed his own house. The walled city of Intramuros. It was during the Spanish colonial architecture. Puerta Isabel, late in Intramuros, and the Fort Santiago, known as the Citadel of the intramuros. Okay, ano pa? Philippine churches. Mga sikat na mga churches sa Philippines is the Manila Cathedral, San Agustin Church, San Sebastian Church. Ito yung tinatawag ko na Gothic Architecture because they are using the pointed arch. But since they use the modern materials and also steel construction, hindi na nila kailangan ng flying buttress. It could be considered as the neo-Gothic architecture, as the modern type of Gothic architecture. Our Lady of Peace and Good Voyage, Antipolo, Lune Church, Baguio Cathedral, and Pauay Church in Ilocos Norte. Another Philippine churches pa, Nuestra Señora de Manawag, Pangasinan, Barazuain Church in Malolos, Bulacan, Binondo Church, Miagao Church, Malate, Santa Cruz, and Quiapo. Ito naman yung mga modern building is the Manila Hotel, which is the first hotel in Asia na may elevator. PGH, or the Philippine General Hospital. University of Santo Tomas main building, designed by Roque Rueño. UP Diliman, College of Engineering. Post Office Building, designed by Juan Arellano and Tomas Mapua. Far Eastern University, designed by Pablo Antonio. Iglesia ni Cristo Cathedral, designed by Carlos Santos Viola. Metropolitan Theater by Juan Arellano, Church of the Risen, and Quezon City Monument. High Alay Building. High Alay Building dati ito ay nakakonstruct sa Taft Avenue, no? But in year 2000 it was demolished. Itong High Alay Building was one of the best example of the classical architecture of the, but it was by the order of isang mayor sa Manila in year 2000, it was demolished, no? After it was demolished 10 years after, in somewhere around in 2009, 9 years after, gumawa sila ng Heritage Act of 2009, in which lahat ng mga building structures, lumang building na lampas ng 50 years have to be protected. Hindi mo basta pwedeng i-demolish.
Sir Rick, 1 minute left.
Okay. So, yan na po ang mga modern buildings sa Philippines. Hindi na natin kasi regarding sa modern, marami tayong ibang speakers na mag-discuss sa'yo about the modern building. So, I hope na may nakuha kayo sa natin. Stop video. Oops.
Yeah, thank you so much, Architect Rick. So now we have a 10 minutes Q&A para sa ating mga student who would like to ask their questions. But first, we would like to welcome you all. And if we can ask you to please introduce yourself and your section one by one.
Ayan. Okay. Just one thing, Architect General. I hope na pag-isipan nyo mabuti kung ano ang kurso para sa inyo. If you think that architecture is for you, or architecture is not for you. Kasi mahirap na mag-aral kayo ng architecture, and after 2 years na maisip nyo that architecture is not for you, you will be wasting your time, effort, and money ng parents nyo. And most of all, yung time nyo. But if you think architecture is really for you, go take architecture and follow your dreams. Okay.
Thank you, Sir Rick, sa words of wisdom para sa ating mga future architects.
Maraming salamat, Architect Janelle.
Ayan. So, pwede ba tayo magpakilala mga students isa-isa?
Okay. Gusto ko makilala.
Para ma-meet natin yung mga future architects natin.
Yes. Tandaan nyo, dati kami, estudyante rin katulad nyo, nag-iisip kung anong kurso. But we also decided that we think that architecture is for us. That's why we took architecture. Okay?
Pwede tayong mag-start kay Mr. Reyes.
Okay.
Sine-check ko lang bayad dito sa Zoom ko. Si Mr. Reyes. Silas.
Hi everyone. I'm Silas Drew Reyes. I'm from grade 12 routine po.
Okay, thank you. Next one is Mr. Kokila, Kevin.
Hello po. I'm Kevin Christian Jago Villa from STEM Niobium po.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Edward Balmores.
Hello, my name is Edward Philip Balmores. I'm from Talbotinium also.
Thank you, Mr. Edward. Next is si De Castro, Nina J. Last call. Okay, wala si ma'am. Si Ma'am Mendoza, hanap muna.
Morning, everyone. My name is Hanami H. Mendoza from grade 12 Niobium po.
Thank you. Next is Mr. David Miguel.
Good afternoon po. I'm Miguel David. You can call me Miggy po. And I'm from Niobium STEM po.
Thank you, Miggy.
Thank you.
Next is, sino pa man yung natawag? Dinglasan? Miss Dinglasan?
Hello po, ako po si Ramela Dinglasan from 12 Mercury.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Castillo.
Hello po, ako po si Carl Mateo Castillo sa 12 Retenium po.
Oh, hello. Next is Mr. Surot Nathaniel.
Good afternoon po. Pangako po si Nathaniel Surot from grade 12 STEM. Niobium.
Thank you. Si Mr. Prince Daniel. Oh, okay. Next, si Mr. Barles Gabriel.
Good afternoon po everyone. My name is Gagal Ezra Vivares po and I'm from STEM po.
Thank you. Si Miss Agulto.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shane Alisa Agoto and I'm from grade 12 Mercury.
Thank you. Si Ashley naman.
Hello, my name is Ashwin Sito. Grade 12 from Tantalum.
Thank you. Next is Miss Shaina Noah. Alam ba si Ma'am Shaina?
Hello po.
Hello.
Ako po si Shaina Nova from 12 Tantalum.
Thank you. Miss Banal.
Hello po. I'm Carol Christine Banal. I'm from 12 Cadmium STEM po.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone? You can turn on your mic and introduce yourself kung na-miss ko kayo. Lahat ba natawag? Okay. So now, merong na lang less than 10 minutes si Architect Rick para sa inyong mga questions. So if you have any, you are free to turn off your mic and ask your question. Anyone? Ganda ng presentation ni Sir Rick. Tanungin niyo siya.
Actually, I've been doing this lecture for the past 7 years. Para sa akin, medyo paulit-ulit na rin yung iba. But every time I have to do the lecture, magre-refresh ulit ako. Nag-aaral ulit ako.
Oo. So wala ba talaga, guys? Tanungin niyo siya. Kung saan nagsimula ang architecture.
Okay.
Joke lang. Kasi kung wala kayong question, we will move to the next speaker. Or if you have any, you can type in the chat box and then DPM ko ni Sir Rick. Okay ba?
Pwede. Kung
Pwede
hindi
ba
ko
kayo
kung hindi ko direkta na masagot, magre-research ako para masagot yung mga katanungan niyo.
Okay. Mag-react na lang tayo if you are all agree with that. Kung yung mga questions nyo, sa next na lang. Diba?
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm gonna introduce to you our next speaker. Our next speaker is nawawala yung project ko. Ano, wala ba talaga questions? Last call.
Ako po.
Ayan, okay, yeah.
Tanong lang po, what can you say about the designs of the traditional than the modern architecture, sir?
Traditional. Can you repeat the question?
What can you say about the design of the traditional than the modern architecture? Like, what is rather complicated or complex for you?
Number one is sa traditional design, for example, sa mga ancient forms of construction, ang pagkakaiba niya, ng malaking pagkakaiba is the method of construction, is the use of the building materials. Noon is napakahirap ng construction because you have to use only by the law of gravity. We don't have the reinforced concrete, walang steel structure. By the use of stone, i-carve mo pang stone pa square para makapaggawa ka ng wall. Nowadays, meron ng hollow blocks, no? Hollow blocks na ipagpatong-patong mo, makagawa ka na ng wall. Or gumawa ka lang ng form walls, lagyan mo ng steel and pour a concrete, meron ka ng concrete wall. Noong araw, hindi mo magagawa yon. And number two is that style of design noong araw is marami sa mga artistic mga carvings in which nowadays hindi na natin ginagamit. Kung ginagamit man, hindi na siya kasing detailed sa ginagawa noong araw. That's why ngayong architecture, sa modern architecture, meron din naman tinatawag na classical architecture na design. Modern siya, pero classical. Ibig sabihin, nire-revive pa rin niya yung mga lumang design para sabihin sa atin na dito tayo nanggaling. Architecture is nanggaling sa mga lumang design. So that's it.
So, what do you prefer po, sir? Like, what is aesthetically pleasing for you po?
Yung pleasing sa akin is ngayon sa modern design. Sa modern design, who's pleasing sa akin. I'm more on modern design. But ang trend kasi ngayon is more on modern design. Meron din dati na naging trend na classical. Usually is depende yan sa request ng kliyente. Merong kliyente na kahit gusto mo mag-design ka ng modern design, gusto niya classical design. So you have to satisfy them, and you also need to design a classical para sa taste nila. Because in the end, ang magagamit ng building is the end user, is the client. So you have to satisfy them. But architectural advice, all the architectural advice needs to come from you as an architect.
Okay. Thank you, Sir Rick. Thank you kay Kevin for that question. I hope na-satisfied ka sa sagot ni Sir Rick. So, anyone, para mag-proceed na tayo sa ating next speaker, ating next subject. So, there you go. Maraming salamat po, Architect Rick, sa inyong time.
Maraming salamat, Architect Chanel.
Ulitin.
Ulitin.
Okay.
Good luck, Architect Marvin. Ikaw na sunod.
Let's move on to our next subject. I will have a very...
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes po, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much, Vice President Janelle, for that very good introduction. And also, I would like to thank mentor, past President, Architect Ricardo Sesbreño. Very good. Ganda nung history of architecture, hindi na ako mahirapan. Okay, so can I share my screen na?
So, that's all, folks. I hope you learned something about the history of architecture. If you like the show, please help my channel grow. This is Architect Rick of Kuya Rick's TV saying, thank you for watching, stay safe, and see you next time. Yes!